Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Mentor Nation. Oh, I'm excited. I have an absolutely killer episode for you today. And before I bring them on, I just want to ask you all for a quick favor. If you could take a second, and if you're watching this video, hit that subscribe button, turn on your notifications. If you're listening to this interview, you can subscribe on Apple as well. That way you'll be the first to get updated anytime a new episode is released. And I have some really great guests coming, so you will definitely want to do that. Okay, so when I tell you I'm excited for this guest, that is a complete understatement. My guest today, no joke, has more accolades than I can even count. Dr. Bill Dorfman is the world's most well-known and successful dentist. He is the trusted dentist of celebrities such as Katy Perry, Usher, the world-famous actor Anthony Hopkins, Fergie, and Mark Wahlberg, and really just so many more. He has over 1 million followers on Instagram, which is kind of insane for being a dentist. He's also a recurring guest on the CBS award-winning talk show, The Doctors. And he also happens to be the creator of Zoom Teeth Whitening, which went on to do over $1.3 billion in sales before he sold the company. Now, here's the thing. What really most impressed me about Dr. Bill is his work founding and growing the LEAP Foundation. And if you're wondering what that is, LEAP is a nonprofit organization which is dedicated to building the next generation of leaders. Every summer, LEAP hosts LEAP Week, which is a week-long award-winning motivational leadership program for youth 15 to 25 years old. And they do it on the campus of UCLA, and hundreds of kids from all over the world come in, and most of them on scholarship. That's what's really cool, is they come in on scholarship and he brings them together, and it's just world-class training and leadership. And the program teaches youth the skills needed for success that they just really don't get in school. Now, in this interview, Dr. Bill shares his incredible story of growing up super poor, how mentors changed his life, and how he attributes success to something that I think is fantastic: copying genius instead of creating mediocrity. This is such a powerful interview. And if you are watching the video, if you're watching this interview, how cool is Dr. Bill's background? His entire back wall is like a digital aquarium. Coolest thing ever. I'm sure the rest of his house is fantastic as well, seeing as how his neighbor is Rihanna. So without further ado, please help me welcome to the show, Dr. Bill Dorfman. Dr. Bill, thank you so much, and welcome to the Mentor Nation podcast. I'm really excited to have you on, and I'm excited for myself and the audience that will listen later today to learn from you. So thank you for being on.
My pleasure, Don.
Awesome. So it's funny enough, it would probably take me half the allotted time for this episode to read off your accolades and the impact that you've made. So I'm going to put that in the intro, but it really is incredible. You are a world-renowned dentist. Some of the biggest celebrities on the planet, they trust you for their work and their smiles. You're a best-selling author, and you hold 2 Guinness World Records, and the list goes on and on. But to me, what's even more incredible is that your professional accolades are matched or maybe even surpassed by your charitable accomplishments. And so I'm excited today to get into how you do what you do and what makes you tick. But I wanted to start, if you wouldn't mind, just sharing a little bit about your story, because you came from very humble beginnings. And I just wanted to have you talk about that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, it's funny. I guess for some reason, people always assume that I was just like born with a silver spoon in my mouth. It's just not true. Right. I mean, we were poor, like poor as poor could be. I didn't know it because my parents were so loving and really tried to, shelter us from that. But, I started working at 5. I would pull weeds in the neighborhood and get paid like 50 cents an hour. And then, from that, I got jobs as a babysitter, and then I was a janitor at at a nursery school that my mom worked at, and till I was old enough to get a real job as a box boy at Ralph's. And then from there, I got a job at Swenson's. And then I just never stopped working. I mean, I've worked my entire life. And, I think that, growing up as poor as we were was actually beneficial for me. I mean, it wasn't like my parents didn't buy me things because they didn't want to. They just couldn't. And so anything I wanted as a kid, Levi's or, a new shirt, whatever, I just knew like I had to go, make money and buy it. So I just did. And, I don't know. My kids didn't grow up that way.
Definitely. And you have 3 daughters, right? I have 3 daughters as well.
Yes, I do. I do. I have twins. They're 22 and a 27-year-old.
That's awesome. Yeah, I might have to have another episode with how to raise girls one day in the future. So did you always know that you wanted to be a dentist, like early on?
I did. It's funny. I was a little kid playing in my living room. I fell down. I knocked out my baby teeth, and I had to have multiple surgeries to ensure that my permanent teeth would grow in properly. And we were just really lucky. We had a great family dentist. And instead of being scared by the whole episode, I was actually kind of, curious and infatuated with, what he was doing. And so even as a little guy, I started observing in the dental office and wanting to watch it and see, what it was all about. And at one point I thought, I want to do this. I want to do this for people. I want to, fix people like this. I don't even know why, but it just stuck. And in a way, it was kind of a mixed blessing because throughout my life, I never had to wonder, like, do I take this class? I just took what I needed to be a dentist, and then I applied to dental school. And so it gave me a very direct path and direction, which was actually fortuitous.
Now, was this all in California? Like, did you grow up in Beverly Hills?
Oh gosh, no. I grew up. I grew up in Granada Hills. The only commonality is the word hills. We grew up. No, I didn't grow up in Beverly Hills. I didn't even know what Beverly Hills was until I was in high school. I'll never forget when I went to UCLA. My roommate had a BMW, and I didn't even know what a BMW was.
Oh man!
I mean, like all my friends had Chevys and maybe a Ford here or there, but like he's like, yeah, I have a Beamer. I'm like, a what? He goes, a BMW. I'm like, what's a B? I had never heard of a BMW.
That's awesome. Well, so you get out of dental school. I'm assuming, did you just start your own practice, or did you like partner up with someone or go into another practice?
One of the things that we're going to talk about in this today is the LEAP program. And LEAP is a motivational leadership program for high school and college students that we've been putting on for the last 13 years at UCLA. It's a week-long program where we basically teach students 15 to 25 the skills that they need to be successful in life. And it's a really powerful, powerful program. And two of the things that I really stress at LEAP, and if kids just walk away with these 2 points, I feel we did our job. And number one is, don't wait for opportunities in life, make them. And number two, when you do get an opportunity, don't take it, master it. And when I graduated dental school, I made an opportunity happen. I had never traveled. I hadn't seen the world. And the idea of me setting up a dental office and literally being tethered to that for the next 30, 40 years without the opportunity to see the world, except for like a vacation here or there, just wasn't what I wanted. And I heard about a clinic in Switzerland where I could go and, work for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, whatever I wanted, if I got hired. The problem is they had 400 applicants for one position. And
Wow.
the chances of me getting that were 1 in 400. But the other thing I teach at Leap is that successful people do the things that unsuccessful people are not willing to do. So what did I do? I had every instructor in my dental school write a letter of recommendation. By the way, if you're a student watching this and you'd like to know how to get the best letter of recommendation, write it yourself. Basically, when you ask the instructor to write it, say, hey, look, if you'd like, I'll write the letter as long as you'll personalize it. And that will get you the best letter. And you'll get more professors that say yes, because it's not as much work for them. So I started sending these letters and soon realized that wasn't working. So then I started calling. Now, this is back in 1983. It wasn't that easy to make international phone calls. You weren't even born then. But I mean, it was a pain in the neck, but I did it. And I started calling, and I called the director of the clinic pretty much every week for the last maybe 5 or 6 weeks of dental school. And I realized that wasn't working. And so I tell kids at Leap that you will have life-defining moments sometimes. Sometimes you plan them, sometimes you don't. They just happen. But
oh, there we go.
Yeah, sorry. But I had a life-defining moment. And the life-defining moment was when I said to the clinical director, I said, listen, I'd like to take you to lunch. He goes, lunch? I said, yeah. He said, you're in San Francisco. I said, I know, but I'll fly out, which was really funny because I had no money, like none. But he said yes. So I took out a small loan. I borrowed money. I bought an airplane ticket, and I flew to Switzerland. And I figured if he hired me, I stayed. And if not, I'd kind of do like the Eurail thing and stay for a little bit, see some of Europe, and come home. And it worked out. They hired me, and I stayed, and it was awesome.
That right there is such a valuable lesson. I was watching you in another episode on YouTube, and you spent quite a bit of time talking about tenacity. And I just thought it was fantastic. And it's just most people would not be willing to do something like that. That's wild. So you went to Switzerland, you came back, and I just want to hit a little bit on your story because the thing that I want to identify, Dr. Bill, is just, have you always had the desire to do whatever it takes, to want to be the best in the world? Like, where did that come from? Is it because you grew up poor? Is it just because you're competitive? Do you mind just expanding on that a little bit?
I don't even know how to explain it. I think the best explanation I can give is we're all wired differently. Sometimes understanding how you're wired helps you overcome obstacles that you have in your life. Sometimes I just feel like it's automatic. It's funny.
Yep.
My office manager, who I'm very close with, Sinette, is an amazing woman. And one day she came up to me and said, I see you wearing all these hats, and you're the one who's solving all these problems for everybody in the practice, everybody in your family. She's like, how do you take care of so many people? Like, how do you do that? And I laughed. I said, I never even really thought about it. Like, it wasn't an option. Like, do you want to? Like, I just did it. And I don't even know, I guess it's just how I'm wired. It's a weird thing. I had this woman, I've never told this story in any podcast. It's crazy that I had this woman who came to me once who was supposed to be like the world's most intuitive, successful guru. Now, I'm not going to lie. I am not a guru believer. I'm just not. Like, I mean, if you are, that's okay. Yeah. I'm like, wow, okay, whatever. I mean, she was a lovely lady, really. And she was incredibly successful. I mean, people flew her all over the world, you know, for her, you know, her fortune telling and this and that. But yeah, I was working on her. I was doing her whole mouth. And as I'm working, I could see she's staring in my eyes. Now, most people, when you're working and doing dentistry on it, they just kind of chill. They close their eyes. But I could tell she was like staring in my eyes the whole time. And at one point in the procedure, she said, "Stop." And I did. And she said, "I know what you're thinking right now." And I thought, okay, this is going to be really good because there's no way she knows what I'm thinking because I'm not thinking anything. I'm just like, it's almost just like automatic for me. Like I just do.
Yep.
And as I'm thinking that, I'm thinking this could be really good, right? And I said, okay, what is it that I'm thinking? She goes, "You're not." She goes, "You just do." She literally said what I said to myself in my head. I'm like, whoa, that freaked me out.
Wow, was her name Sylvia?
How'd you know?
Sylvia Brown?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
Well, I don't have that power, obviously. So.
It was crazy. Because I'm sitting there like, but she's never going to. And she said exactly what I said in my head. It was crazy. Wow. Her name was Vivian.
Gotcha.
Her name was Vivian. Crazy.
Wow. So I have one more question on dental before we move on. And it's something that I've actually wondered because, you know, the story, I mean, it's easy for anyone to see. You grew your business to over $1 billion in sales, and then you sold it, I believe, in 2010 on October the 10th. Is that right?
Right. But let me explain something because people get confused when you say that. They think my dental practice. So what you guys have to understand is I am a practicing dentist. I've been practicing dentistry since 1983, and I run a small office in Century City, California. I also formed a company with my partner called Discus Dental, and Discus Dental was the largest tooth whitening company in the world. In fact, we invented Zoom. The wrong Zoom. I wish it was the Zoom we're on right now, the video conferencing, but we invented Zoom tooth whitening. And I think the name was so amazing that they stole it and they used it for the whole video conferencing thing, which I guess is a compliment. But we grew Discus, which we started in about 1990 and owned for 20 years, from zero to $1.3 billion in sales, and sold it to Philips on October 10th, 2010 at 10 a.m. So it was 10-10-10. And in fact, when we talked to Leap, there's a big reason why we have this whole thing we call the 10 culture. So
that's awesome. We are almost there. My question is, and I heard this from a friend who is an alumni at Leap. And I asked him before this interview, I was like, what would be a really great question to ask Dr. Bill? And this is what he said. He's like, ask Dr. Bill how he took, because like he said, and it's pretty well known from what I'm gathering, that you are the one responsible for really taking dentistry from something that people associate with pain and anguish, and you made it sexy. And so he's just like, ask Dr. Bill how he had the insight to do that and how you did that. So I want to ask that question.
Well, it was funny because in 1987, 1988, tooth whitening started. And even back then, and think about with inflation and everything, even back then, we were charging patients $800 to whiten their teeth. We don't even charge that much anymore. We charge half that. But, that's how valuable this was to the consumer. And the company that was the leading company at the time was selling the tooth whitening product in plastic bags with like syringes that looked, they were just like syringes. And you probably don't remember this, but before we even had Xerox, there was something called mimeograph, which was like this flimsy, like tissue paper with this bluish writing on it that disappeared after like 2 or 3 months. And this is what they were giving patients. And I was thinking, for $850, they should walk out with something really cool. And, so I got a phone call from the company and, telling me that I was their number one customer, that I was selling more tooth whitening product than any dentist in the country. Well, it makes sense. I'm in Hollywood, Beverly Hills. And I said, well, as long as I have you on the phone, I have some ideas. And they're like, yeah, you're 29. Go away. I'm like, all right. There's this common theme that's run through my life. And it's that every time I honestly, truly am only committed to doing something philanthropic, something great happens out of it. I don't know, call it the universe. I don't know what you want to call it. But I was asked to be involved in this charity auction. And when I went to that, the guy in line next to me was Robert Heyman. Robert Heyman is the son of Fred Heyman. Fred Heyman is the man who literally created Beverly Hills. He created Beverly Hills. He created Giorgio Cosmetics. He created 273. This was all Fred Heyman. And Robert, who was my age, grew up in that industry. He was an MBA from Boston. And so together, Robert and I created Discus Dental. And we created Night White and Day White and Zoom and all this. And what we would do is we would go to Neiman's and Saks and all of these high-end department stores and study the way the cosmetic departments would display the cosmetics and the packaging and everything. And, one of the things we teach at LEAP, Copy Genius. And we then compiled a bunch of ideas and put out a beautiful kit, which had never been done. And we shifted the whole mindset from this being a medical type procedure to a cosmetic procedure. Tooth whitening is a cosmetic procedure. So we made it look like a cosmetic. And we hired professional models. They didn't do that in dentistry. When you looked in a dental journal back then, it was all bloody and gross. We were the first company ever to hire professional models, to get a professional ad agency and really make this look like a cosmetic. Image is everything.
That's right.
We created an image and, it worked in cosmetic sales, right? So we copied it.
Copy genius. Don't invent mediocrity. I love that. So you're growing your business. So obviously have you always been involved in charity? And this is one question that I had because there's going to be a lot of listeners and a lot of young listeners as well. And they have these role models that they look up to that have accomplished so many different things. And so a lot of times they lose focus and they want to attempt a million different things. Were you balanced from day one, or did you just really focus on being the best that you could be in dentistry? And once things started to take off and you could build a great team, you could focus on more charitable work and, just a lot of the other things, writing and mentoring others? Or have you just been doing these things since day one?
I grew up so incredibly poor. We didn't have the wherewithal to give anything, so that wasn't part of my upbringing, but what I did believe in sincerely from the time I was a little kid is that, you can give back in other ways too. One of my most influential teachers was Mrs. Clement, and she said, if you go through this world without having made it a better place or having been here, shame on you. And so even though we didn't have money, we would go into poorer areas in the valley and, make Christmas for them or make Thanksgiving for them or, do things, for other people. And then, Robert, my partner, grew up in one of the wealthiest families in Beverly Hills. And, as Discus started growing, he was very committed to giving back and really, kind of led the way for all the philanthropy that we did. And then out of the blue, one day, we got this random phone call from the Crown Council. And we didn't know them. And they said, look, we'd like to do a large fundraising campaign called Smiles for Life. And basically we'll have, patients go into a dental office, get their teeth whitened. And instead of writing a check to the dentist, they'll write it to Smiles for Life. Can we buy your whitening products at cost so we can, use them in the campaign? And, after vetting this, we came back to them and said, no, you can't. We'll give it to you. And so we gave them millions of dollars in whitening products over the year. And together with country singer Garth Brooks, he and I went out and we did public service announcements. We got a few celebrities involved in doing that as well. And to date, we've raised over $44 million for children's charities and hospitals through the Smiles for Life campaign. This has gone on over 20 years now. And so, that was a huge impact. And LEAP, LEAP is a 501c3 nonprofit. And, we go out and we raise, millions of dollars to put this on. The program has about 400 to 450 kids in it every summer. And 60% of those kids come in on scholarship. And we go out and we raise money so that the kids can come. And we have a lot of very, very generous donors that help us do this.
Wow. Now, I want to spend the rest of this on LEAP because, I know firsthand, the kids that graduate from LEAP, it's a week. They come back.
It's 1 week every summer, but it's not like you just go for the week and we're done.
Right.
This will be the next program. Hopefully, barring COVID problems, it will be live, but it will be July 18th to the 24th. If you want more information, you can go to www.leapfoundation.com. I see my ring light is on there. Or there's a phone number you can call, 877-855-5327. But it's not like they just go for a week and we're done. The idea behind LEAP is we put you in a group with kids your own age who hopefully will become your best friends for life. And it's funny because time and time again, I know you mentioned that, Evan Gold, I just saw him. He was in LA for his bachelor party this weekend. And he said to me, he goes, Doc, all my best friends in life, I met at LEAP.
That's right.
And there's so many students that will tell me that, their best friends in life are all friends that they met at LEAP.
It's such Dan Rife, Unser, I know Matt Granados, these are all friends of mine. And
Trish.
Oh yeah, Trish. Yep, she lives just not like 5 minutes from me here in Nashville, or she did. But yeah, I mean, it's just their mindset. Some of these kids, they're in their early 20s running $1 million companies, and without fail, every one of them associate all of their mindset. And just more importantly than that, it's like their ability to just find mentors. They associate all that to Leap and just what they learned in Leap. And so I want to have you share, because I mean, you bring in some of the most incredible people to teach these kids, and it's between 15 to 25. Is that correct?
Yeah. And the part that really warms my heart is the community support and involvement. I mean, I could never afford to pay these people to come. Mark Wahlberg, Anthony Hopkins, Eva Longoria, Kathy Bates, Paula Abdul comes every year, Jonathan Bennett, Devin Druid from 13 Reasons Why, Michael Strahan, Apollo Ono, our mayor, Eric Garcetti. I mean, I could go on and on and on.
Wow.
It's Usher. It's phenomenal. And these people come because they are as committed to our youth as we are. And it's pretty phenomenal. And the whole idea behind Leap is to teach these young students skills that they need to be successful in life. We say it gives you a 7-year head start on life. And we teach them things that they're not going to learn in school, but that are important, and a lot of these things we've been throwing out throughout this interview, but it's really critical. I mean, one of the things we teach at Leap is appreciation. Every kid that comes to the program gets a pad of I appreciate notes. And at the top it says I appreciate, then you put the person's name, and then you tell why, and then they sign it at the bottom. Well, where else do kids learn appreciation? They don't.
They don't.
And I'll tell you something. Last year at the live program, before we did the virtual program, which we did this year, but last year at the live program with 450 kids, I got 450 I appreciate notes. And 99% of them said, Dr. Bill, I appreciate you and the Leap team because you changed my life.
Wow.
Now, I said 99% said that. The reason I said that is because 1% will say, hey, Dr. Bill, Leap saved my life. And I know it did. These kids come in, they don't have any kind of support structure at home, in their community, or anything. And this is not only the first time that they feel that kind of support, but this is the first time that they ever feel like they're worth anything.
That's right.
The first thing we do with kids, like in the first hour that they're there, I do a thing we call eagles and turkeys, where I talk about being an eagle as opposed to being a turkey in life. And I say to the kids, when you woke up this morning, whether you think you did this or not, you put a number on your head. 1 is the lowest, 10 is the highest. I said, how many did not put a 10 on your head? Kids will raise their hand. I'm like, why? Who picked the number? What kind of test did you have to take? I said, erase whatever it is you put there and put a 10 on your head. I said, and now I want you to walk like a 10, talk like a 10, act like a 10, but most importantly, surround yourself with other kids that are 10s. Because if you want to be a 10 and all your friends are 2s, guess what? It's not going to happen.
That's right. They'll bring you down rather than you bring them up most of the time. That's so true. I have one more question, and then if it's okay with you, I have just like 3 minutes of just rapid fire, like just quick questions. But
sure.
my one question is you mentor countless people, and you've touched on it, but often because you're so busy and you have so many things going on, you only get just a few minutes with them. And so I was just curious, what are a couple of the most common questions that people ask you, and how do you typically respond?
Okay. This is my favorite one. Dr. Bill, what's the secret of success? Are you ready for this one?
Yeah.
It's not a secret. Work your buns off. I mean, I honestly, it's like kids today want a pill that they could take. It doesn't happen like that. I mean, I honestly think there was a period in my life that I worked harder than anybody I had ever met. I was seeing patients 40-hour a week. I was working like 60 hours a week as a dentist in my office. And then I was filming ABC's Extreme Makeover. And because that was so time intensive, I realized I couldn't do that, Monday to Friday. So then I was filming 14-hour days on Saturday and Sunday. And waking up every day at 5 o'clock and going to the gym because I'm a big fitness buff. It was crazy. But I had a goal. And the goal came to fruition. So it was pretty awesome.
What was the goal? To be the best?
To sell our company, to grow the company and sell it, which we did.
That's awesome. No, that's great advice. That's why I follow you, and also love to follow people like Dwayne Johnson, because they just don't sugarcoat it. It's like hard work. What else do you want? Like,
yeah,
there's no pill or magic. It's just work. Be the hardest worker in the room. So a couple rapid fire before I let you go. My first question is, you have 1 million followers on Instagram. Do you manage that account yourself, or do you have a strategy?
So that's funny. I actually have a whole Instagram team, right?
Oh, wow.
Antonio curates all my content. So, I send him the photos. He puts together the videos, and he adds all the hashtags and blah, 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 and does that. Dan is the man who basically positions it to make sure it hits the Explorer page as often as possible. So that way it grows organically. So those two guys do it. I actually answer all my DMs. So anybody who's listening that really wants to talk to me, my account's verified, so it's real. If you DM me, I promise you I answer every single one myself. It's just Dr. Dr. Bill, Bill Dorfman. And I don't do Twitter. I don't do Facebook. Because I get tons of patients from Instagram. I don't from those others. So I don't really spend time doing them.
Yeah, that's very smart. Next question. And you may not be able to answer this one, but I don't know how many celebrities will listen to this podcast. Out of all the celebrities that you spend time with, who is your favorite? And feel free to pick more than one if you need to.
Well, I had a very, very dear, sweet, and loving relationship with Esther Williams. And most of your listeners won't know who she is, but she was my very first celebrity patient. She came into my office right when I came back from Switzerland, and I took care of her whole life. And for those of you who don't know, Esther was MGM's biggest star. She was the $1 Million Mermaid. And actually the inspiration for my book, $1 Billion Smile, it was going to be $1 Million Smile. And then we thought, we're going to bump it up a notch. And plus, billion sounds better with Dr. Bill. So we had a really, really great relationship. And Esther lived through an era of Hollywood we'll never see again, in the days when the studios made the stars. And she's the only star still to date who had 2 huge dressing rooms at the MGM studio lot. Why? Wet days and dry days. Every film she did, she was in the pool. And so they had one dressing room for wet days where everything was vinyl and, waterproof, and then dry days. And they developed a whole line of cosmetics for her. All these waterproof mascaras and eyelid. That's all because of Esther, and she had quite an amazing life, and she shared a lot of it with me. So she has a very special and dear place in my heart.
That's awesome. Was there a celebrity that surprised you in that they are not anything like the roles that they play on television or in music?
Look, they're actors. So Anthony Hopkins is the sweetest guy ever. He's nothing like Hannibal Lecter. Nothing like it. So I would say all of them.
Okay.
He also gave me my favorite quote in life, which is, when I grow up, all I want to be is a little boy.
I love that. I have two last final questions. The next one is, what do you want your legacy to be?
I mean, I think it really stems from what I said earlier. I just want to make sure that when I'm gone, I left this place better than when I got here.
Got it. And my very last question is if you could go back in time and spend 30 seconds with yourself 35 years ago, 40 years ago, and then you disappeared, what advice would you give yourself if you only had 30 seconds?
Just stay strong and continue to believe in you.
Awesome. Dr. Bill, it has been an absolute pleasure. I will put all of the links, everything in the show notes, especially LEAP. I did have one, as far as LEAP, how fast does it sell out? Because I could imagine they go pretty quick, only having 400 spots.
Well, it's going to be the last week of July, and usually we sell out sometime in July. So, if you, and here's something new too. This year we had to do LEAP virtually. We've never done that before. So we actually will be running two programs concurrently. There'll be the in-person program at UCLA, which will be $2,500 for the week. And then the virtual program, which will be about $450. So, the other thing I wanted to bring up and we didn't touch on is, because I've interviewed so many amazing and great people over the years through LEAP and everything else, I started a podcast too called Meet the Mentor. And the podcast has actually exploded. We're number 1 in Yemen. We're number 2 in Iceland. We're number 3 in Finland. And I think I ranked 94th in a category of 47,000 in the United States. So
yeah, well, I'm looking at your podcast to listen to you interview, and I'm like, oh shit, Paula Abdul, Anthony Hopkins, Mark Wahlberg. I'm like, oh my God, like I need to get on that level. Like,
yeah,
fast.
We got some good people. So so
definitely
please.
Check out Meet the Mentor. I will put a link to your podcast on my podcast show notes. Absolutely. Dr. Bill, I just want to say thank you for your time. It means a lot. And you shared some incredible things, and I just can't wait to publish this and let everybody listen to it. So
yeah, that was fun, John. And you know what? It's fun. I mean, 99% of the stuff we talk about, you said, but there are a few things I've never talked about on any other podcast. So that was fun.
Yes. Thank you. I appreciate that.